Imagine you're walking alone through an ancient mansion, its corridors dim and lined with portraits whose eyes seem to follow you. The air is heavy, the silence oppressive, but then you hear it a faint whisper, like voices murmuring secrets. From the walls themselves, your heart races. You're not alone, but no one is there. This chilling sensation sets the stage for Sherlock Holmes and the Whispering Walls. A gripping tale where the world's greatest detective unravels a mystery, steeped in fear, deception, and a house that seems alive with malice. In this video, we're diving into the shadows of Blackwood Manor, where Holmes and Watson face a case that tests their courage and intellect. Join us for a thrilling journey through 10 chapters, starting with a chilling mystery that grabs you and doesn't let go. Hit that like button and subscribe to uncover the secrets with us. The fog cloaks London's streets in a ghostly shroud, muffling the clatter of hooves and the distant cries of newsboys. Inside 2 to 1B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes sits by a crackling fire, his violin untouched, his lean frame taut with restless energy. It's a dreary autumn evening in 1895, and Dr. John Watson, seated across from him, sips tea, sensing his friend's craving for a challenge. Holmes' eyes, sharp as a hawk's, flicker toward the window, where gas lamps cast feeble halos in the mist. The silence is broken by a sharp rap at the door, and Mrs. Hudson hurries in, her face etched with concern. Behind her stands Miss Eleanor Grayson, a young woman whose pale face and trembling hands betray a deep terror. Her dark curls are damp from the fog, and her eyes, wide with fear, dart around the room as if expecting pursuit. She clutches a crumpled letter, her voice barely a whisper as she pleads, "Mr. Holmes, you're my only hope. Blackwood Manor is cursed, and it's taken my brother." Watson feels a chill creep up his spine, not from the cold, but from the raw dread in her words. Holmes leans forward, his curiosity ignited, and gestures for her to sit. Eleanor's story pours out in halting bursts, her hands twisting the letter as she speaks. She and her brother, Thomas Grayson, inherited Blackwood Manor, a sprawling estate on the Yorkshire moors, from their late uncle Sir Reginald Blackwood, who died 6 months ago under mysterious circumstances. The manor, built in the 16th century, is a labyrinth of stone corridors, towering turrets, and shadowy chambers, its history steeped in tales of tragedy and treachery. Locals shun it, whispering of a curse tied to the Blackwood family, of voices that haunt its walls, and of heirs who vanish without a trace. Thomas, a pragmatic architect with dreams of restoring historic homes, scoffed at the rumors and moved into the manor 3 months ago, determined to transform it into a family legacy. Eleanor, reluctant but loyal, joined him a month later, hoping to support his vision. But from the moment she arrived, the manor felt alive with malice's creaking. Floors, flickering candlelight, and icy draughts seemed to watch her every move. At night, she heard whispers, faint and indistinct, like voices murmuring behind the walls, sometimes forming words like leave or ours. She dismissed them as imagination until Thomas began to change. 2 weeks ago, Thomas grew withdrawn, his usual cheer replaced by a haunted look. He spoke of hearing the same whispers, voices that knew his name, calling him in the dead of night. He became obsessed with the manor's history, poring over old journals and maps in the library, muttering about secrets in the stones. Eleanor grew alarmed, urging him to leave, but he refused, insisting he was close to uncovering something vital. 3 nights ago, she woke to a screamed Thomas voice, raw with terror. She rushed to his room, finding it empty, the bed unmade, and a single note on the desk in his frantic scrawl: "The walls are watching." They know. The room was icy, the air heavy, and Eleanor swears she heard a low chuckle from the walls as she fled. Terrified, she searched the manor but found no trace of him, no footprints, no signs of struggle, only an oppressive silence. Convinced the manor itself had claimed him, she fled to London, seeking Sherlock Holmes, whose reputation for solving the unsolvable had reached her through a family friend. Holmes listens with rapt attention, his fingers steepled, his mind already dissecting her tale. He interrupts with precise questions, his voice calm but probing. "Describe the whispers, Miss Grayson. Were they male, female, or something else?" Eleanor hesitates, saying they were too faint to tell. Sometimes a chorus, sometimes a single voice hissing mine. Holmes asks about visitors to the manor. Eleanor recalls only the staff and elderly Mr. Amos, and a stern housekeeper, Mrs. Gray, plus our locale historian, Mr. Clarence Harrow, who visited often, arguing with Thomas over his restoration plans. Harrow, a gaunt man with a zealot's passion for the manor's past, claimed the Blackwoods' alterations angered its spirit. Holmes raises an eyebrow, intrigued. He inquires about enemies, and Eleanor mentions their cousin, Arthur Blackwood, a bitter man who contested Sir Reginald's will, believing the manor should be his. Arthur had written threatening letters, accusing Thomas of stealing his birthright. Holmes nods, his eyes gleaming as he files away these suspects. Watson, ever the voice of reason, suggests Thomas might have suffered a mental collapse, perhaps wandering off in a fugue state. Holmes dismisses it with a wave. A man of Thomas' caliber does not vanish over fancies, Watson. The note suggests intent someone wanted him to fear the walls. This is no ghost story, but a calculated crime. He asks Eleanor about the manor's layout, learning it has hidden passages, a sealed crypt, and a tower locked for decades. These details spark Holmes' interests. Such features could conceal a human hand behind the hauntings. He agrees to take the case, instructing Eleanor to return to the manor and keep the staff unaware of his involvement. "We must observe them unawares," he says, his voice low. Eleanor, visibly relieved, agrees. Promising to meet them tomorrow, Holmes and Watson prepare swiftly. The prospect of a mystery in the wild moors banishing Holmes' ennui. Watson packs his revolver and medical kit, sensing danger in Eleanor's tale, while Holmes gathers his magnifying glass, notebook, and a map of Yorkshire. On the train north, Holmes speculates aloud, his mind racing. The whispers, he posits, could be a psychological ploy to drive Thomas mad, perhaps using hidden pipes or vents to carry sound. The note, "The walls are watching," suggests a deliberate attempt to terrify, but why? Was Thomas targeted for his inheritance, his plans for the manor, or something he discovered in its history? Holmes suspects Harrow's obsession or Arthur's. Greed might hold answers, but the manor's Stephamus and Mrs. Graycould also play a role, privy to its secrets. He instructs Watson to note every detail upon arrival, the manor's architecture, the staff's behavior, and any signs of tampering. The train cuts through the darkening countryside, the moors unfolding in a bleak expanse of heather and crags. By dusk, they reach a remote station, where a creaking carriage carries them toward Blackwood Manor. The driver, a grizzled local, mutters warnings about the cursed place, but Holmes silences him with a sharp look. As the manor looms into view, its stone turrets clawing at the stormy sky, Watson feels a knot in his stomach. The windows are dark, save for a faint glow in one tower, and the air is thick with damp and decay. Eleanor waits at the iron gates, her lantern casting jittery shadows. She leads them inside, her voice hushed. The entrance hall is cavernous, its walls adorned with faded tapestries and stern portraits of Blackwood ancestors, their eyes glinting in the candlelight. Holmes pauses, his gaze sweeping over the flagstones, the carved banister, and a peculiar scratch near the doorframe. Watson, trailing behind, hears a faint rustle, like a sigh from the walls, and grips his revolver. Holmes turns, a faint smile playing on his lips. The game is afoot, Watson. The mystery of Blackwood Manor has gripped them, and Holmes is ready to peel back its secrets. Thomas's disappearance, the sinister whispers, and the manor's dark history hint at a deadly plot. What lies within these ancient walls, and who seeks to keep it hidden? In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they delve into the manor's depths, uncovering clues that point to a chilling truth. If you're hooked on this eerie tale, hit that like button and subscribe to join us on this adventure. What do you think is behind the whispers? Drop your guesses in the comments and let's unravel this mystery together. The grand entrance hall of Blackwood Manor looms around Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson, its towering walls swallowing the light of Eleanor Grayson's lantern. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of old stone and mildew, and the faint rustle Watson heard moments ago lingers in his mind, though he dismisses it as the wind. Holmes, however, is alert, his sharp eyes scanning the intricate carvings on the banister, the worn tapestries depicting Blackwood ancestors, and the peculiar scratch near the doorframe that caught his attention. Eleanor, pale and anxious, leads them deeper into the manor, her footsteps echoing on the flagstones. Holmes has already begun to dissect the mystery of Thomas Grayson's disappearance and the eerie whispers that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. The note, "The walls are watching," they know, suggests a deliberate attempt to terrify, but by whom? As they move toward the heart of the manor, Holmes is determined to uncover the first clues, knowing that every creak, every shadow, could hold the key to a sinister truth. Eleanor guides them to the library, a cavernous room lined with shelves of leather-bound books, their spines cracked with age. A massive fireplace dominates one wall, its embers cold, and a heavy oak table is strewn with Thomas' architectural plans for the manor's restoration. Holmes examines the papers, noting detailed sketches of the manor's layout, its maze of corridors, hidden passages, and the sealed crypt Eleanor mentioned. One drawing catches his eye, a cross-section of the north wing, where Thomas had marked a section labelled Hollow Wall. Holmes traces the lines with his finger, his mind racing. Could this be the source of the whispers, a structural anomaly used to create the illusion of a haunted house? He asks Eleanor if Thomas explored this area. She nods, her voice trembling. "He was obsessed with it," she says. "He spent hours tapping the walls, saying he heard echoes, like voices trapped inside." Watson shivers, but Holmes' expression is one of intense focus. This is no supernatural nonsense, but a clue to a human hand at work. Holmes begins a meticulous inspection of the library, his magnifying glass glinting as he examines the floorboards, the fireplace, and the walls. He taps the paneling near Thomas's desk, listening for irregularities, and detects a faint hollowness behind one section. "Watson," he says, "note the resonance here. It suggests a cavity, perhaps a passage." Watson, ever practical, suggests it's just old construction, but Holmes shakes his head. This manor is a puzzle, and someone has manipulated its pieces. He asks Eleanor about the staff, Mr. Amos, the groundskeeper, and Mrs. Gray, the housekeeper. Eleanor describes Amos as a gruff, loyal man who's tended the estate for decades. Suspicious of outsiders, but devoted to the Blackwood legacy. Mrs. Gray, stern and efficient, keeps the house running but seems cold, almost resentful of Eleanor and Thomas' presence. Holmes files this away, suspecting the staff's knowledge of the manor's secrets could be key. Leaving the library, they move to Thomas' bedroom, where he vanished 3 nights ago. The room is sparsely furnished, with a 4-poster bed, a wardrobe, and a small desk where the cryptic note was found. Holmes examines the scene with clinical precision, noting the unmade bed, the open window, and the absence of struggle. The note, still on the desk, is written in Thomas's hand, the ink smudged as if written in haste. Holmes studies it under his magnifying glass, detecting a faint trace of wax residue on the paper's edge. Curious, he mutters, as if it was sealed briefly, perhaps hidden. He checks the window, finding scuff marks on the sill, suggesting someone climbed in or out. Watson points out that Thomas could have fled, but Holmes counters, fled, yet left his coat and boots. No, Watson, he was taken or lured. The wax residue intrigues him. Could it point to a hidden message or a clue Thomas left behind? Eleanor mentions that Thomas spent his last days in the north wing, near the locked tower, convinced the whispers were loudest there. Holmes insists on seeing it, and they navigate a labyrinth of corridors, the air growing colder with each step. The tower door, heavy oak with rusted iron hinges, is padlocked, but Holmes notices fresh scratches around the lock, as if someone tried to force it open. Thomas was here, he says, kneeling to inspect the floor. He finds a faint chalk mark, a crude arrow pointing to a nearby wall. Holmes taps it, hearing the same hollow echo as in the library. This manor hides more than history, he says, his voice low. Someone is using its secrets to frighten or eliminate its heirs. Watson feels a prickle of unease, the darkness of the corridor pressing in, but Holmes is undeterred, his mind already mapping the manor's hidden spaces to gather more insight. Holmes questions Eleanor about Clarence Harrow, the historian who opposed Thomas' renovations. She describes him as a wiry man with a fanatic's gleam in his eye, obsessed with preserving Blackwood Manor's sacred history. He'd argued with Thomas, claiming the manor's walls held secrets that should remain undisturbed. Holmes suspects Harrow's obsession might mask a darker motive, perhaps knowledge of a treasure or scandal tied to the estate. Eleanor also mentions Arthur Blackwood, their cousin, who visited a month ago, his anger over the inheritance barely contained. He'd stormed out after accusing Thomas of stealing his rightful legacy, vowing to take back what's mine. Holmes' eyes narrow. Arthur's greed and Harrow's fanaticism are threads he must follow. But the manor itself feels like a living player in this mystery. As night falls, Holmes and Watson settle into guest rooms, but Holmes refuses to rest. He sketches a rough map of the manor, marking the hollow wall, the tower, and the crypt. He theorizes that the whispers could be produced by a device, perhaps pipes or vents rigged to carry sound, or a person hiding in secret passages. The chalk mark and wax residue suggest Thomas was close to uncovering something, perhaps a hidden room or document that threatens someone's plans. Holmes instructs Watson to keep his revolver close, sensing danger in the manor's oppressive silence. As they retire, Watson hears a faint murmur, like a sigh from the walls, and grips his weapon. Holmes, however, smiles faintly, his mind alight with possibilities. "The walls are speaking, Watson," he says. "We must learn their language." The mystery deepens, with Blackwood Manor's secrets whispering from every stone. Thomas, disappearance, the hollow walls, and the suspects circling the estate point to a plot as intricate as the Manor's design. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they uncover a chilling clue in the North Wing, bringing them closer to the truth behind the whispers and the danger lurking within. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. What's hiding in the Manor's walls? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can keep up with Sherlock Holmes. The corridors of Blackwood Manor seem to pulse with secrets as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson venture into the North Wing, their lanterns casting flickering shadows on the ancient stone walls. The air is colder here, heavy with the scent of damp moss and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Holmes' discovery of the hollow wall in the library and the chalk mark near the locked tower has sharpened his focus, pointing to a hidden space within the manor that may hold the key to Thomas Grayson's disappearance. The whispers Eleanor described, coupled with Thomas' cryptic note, "The walls are watching," they now suggest a calculated effort to terrify or manipulate, and Holmes is determined to uncover the mechanism behind it. Watson, gripping his revolver, feels the Manor's oppressive weight, every creak and sigh amplifying his unease. Holmes, undaunted, moves with purpose, his magnifying glass ready to reveal the truth hidden in the North Wing's shadows. They begin at the base of the tower, where the heavy oak door remains padlocked, its fresh scratches glinting in the lantern light. Holmes examines the lock closely, noting the marks are precise, as if made with a tool rather than brute force. Someone tried to enter recently, he murmurs, perhaps Thomas, seeking answers. He follows the chalk arrow to the adjacent wall, tapping it with his cane. The hollow echo is unmistakable, louder here than in the library. Holmes presses his ear to the stone, listening intently, and gestures for Watson to do the same. After a moment, Watson hears it, a faint, rhythmic murmur, like whispered words carried on a breeze, too indistinct to decipher. "Good Lord, Holmes," he whispers, "it's real." Holmes' eyes gleam. Not spirits, Watson, but science or deception. He suspects a hidden passage or device, perhaps pipes channeling sound to create the illusion of haunted walls. He marks the spot with chalk, planning to return with tools to explore further. Holmes leads Watson through the North Wing's maze of corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls are adorned with faded portraits of Blackwood ancestors, their stern faces seeming to judge the intruders. One painting of a severe woman in a high-collared gown catches Holmes' eye. Its frame is slightly askew, and he gently adjusts it, revealing a faint seam in the wall behind. He presses the stone, and with a soft click, a narrow panel slides open, exposing a dark passage barely wide enough for a man. Watson's breath catches, but Holmes is unfazed, peering inside with his lantern. The passage is dusty, its walls rough-hewn, and a faint draught carries the same metallic scent. "This is no architectural quirk," Holmes says. "It was built with intent to hide, or to spy." He finds a small scrap of cloth caught on a jagged stone, blue wool matching Thomas's usual attire. He was here, Holmes confirms, pocketing the evidence. They follow the passage, which twists downward, its air growing colder and more oppressive. After a few yards, it ends at a rusted iron grate, beyond which lies a larger chamber, too dark to see clearly. Holmes examines the grate, noting fresh scratches and a bent bar, suggesting someone forced their way through or was forced. He theorizes Thomas may have discovered this passage while investigating the whispers, only to encounter danger. Watson suggests searching the chamber, but Holmes cautions against it without proper tools, fearing the passage could be a trap. Instead, he marks the route and returns to the main corridor, determined to question the staff about the manor's hidden features. Mrs. Gray, the housekeeper, and Mr. Amos, the groundskeeper, have lived here for years. Surely they know of such secrets. Back in the main hall, Holmes finds Mrs. Gray polishing silver, her movements brisk but her eyes wary. He questions her about the manor's construction, asking casually about hidden passages. Her face tightens, and she claims ignorance, insisting the manor is just old and creaky. But Holmes notices her hands tremble, and her glance toward the north wing betrays her. "You've heard the whispers, haven't you?" he presses. Mrs. Gray snaps that it's nonsense, but her voice wavers, and she hurries away, muttering about duties. Holmes exchanges a look with Watson. This woman knows more than she admits. Next, they track down Mr. Amos in the stables, a grizzled man with weathered hands and a scowl. He's more forthcoming, admitting the manor has queer places, but claiming the passages were sealed long ago. When Holmes mentions the tower, Amos grows cagey, saying it's been locked since Sir Reginald's death, and only he and Mrs. Gray have keys. Holmes notes his defensiveness. Amos is hiding something, perhaps loyalty to a darker secret. Holmes decides to investigate Clarence Harrow, the historian, suspecting his obsession with the manor's past could be linked to the whispers. Eleanor arranges a meeting at the village inn, where Harrow awaits, his thin frame hunched over a stack of old manuscripts. His eyes burn with fervor as he speaks of Blackwood Manor's history, a tale of feuds, betrayals, and a lost Blackwood heir, rumored to have hidden a fortune in the walls. He claims Thomas' renovations threatened to destroy this legacy, angering the manor spirit. Holmes probes further, asking if Harrow ever explored the passages. Harrow denies it, but his fingers twitch, and Holmes spots a smudge of chalk on his cuff, matching the manor's walls. This man, Holmes realizes, has been inside the hidden spaces, perhaps orchestrating the whispers to scare Thomas away or, worse, as evening falls. Holmes and Watson return to the manor, where Eleanor reports a new disturbance, a faint tapping from the north wing, heard by the servants. Holmes suspects it's no coincidence. Someone knows they're close to the truth and is trying to distract or frighten them. He examines Thomas' architectural plans again, noticing a notation about the crypt, which connects to the north wing via an underground tunnel. Could this be where Thomas was taken? Holmes resolves to explore it tomorrow, but he warns Watson to stay vigilant. The manor's secrets are unraveling, and the whispers are growing louder, as if urging them to turn back. Holmes, however, is relentless, his mind piecing together the clues. The hollow wall, the passage, the chalk smudge, and the staff's evasiveness. The north wing has revealed its first secrets, but Blackwood Manor holds more, each one darker than the last. Thomas, fate, the whispers, and the hidden passages point to a plot rooted in greed or vengeance, with Harrow, Amos, or Mrs. Gray as possible players. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they venture into the manor's crypt, uncovering a shocking clue that brings them closer to Thomas and the sinister force behind the whispering walls. If you're hooked on this chilling mystery, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Who's behind the whispers? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The chill of Blackwood Manor's north wing lingers in Dr. John Watson's bones as he follows Sherlock Holmes through a narrow, spiraling staircase leading to the manor's crypt. The air grows colder with each step, thick with the musty scent of earth and decay, and the faint whispers that haunted their night seem to echo louder here, though Watson can't be sure if it's the manor or his own nerves. Holmes, lantern in hand, moves with the precision of a predator, his mind fixed on the clues uncovered in the north wing, the hollow wall, the hidden passage, and the chalk smudge on Clarence Harrow's cuff, Thomas Grayson's disappearance. Marked by his cryptic note, "The walls are watching," they know points to a calculated plot, and the crypt, connected to the north wing by an underground tunnel, may hold the key to his fate. The manor staff, Mrs. Gray and Mr. Amos, have shown signs of deception, and Harrow's obsession with the manor's history raises suspicions. Holmes is determined to explore the crypt's secrets, but Watson senses danger in the oppressive darkness. Gripping his revolver as they descend into the unknown, the staircase opens into a cavernous chamber, its stone walls slick with moisture and etched with faded blackwood crests. The crypt is a maze of alcoves, each holding a marble sarcophagus inscribed with the names of long-dead ancestors. Holmes' lantern casts eerie shadows, making the carved faces of angels and gargoyles seem to shift. He examines the floor, noting scuff marks in the dust, fresh enough to suggest recent activity. "Someone has been here," he says, his voice low, echoing off the walls. Watson, uneasy, points out a rusted iron gate at the far end, leading to the tunnel Thomas marked on. His plans? Holmes approaches, his magnifying glass revealing scratches on the gate's lock, similar to those on the tower door. "This was forced open," he murmurs, and not long ago. He pushes the gate, which creaks open, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel that slopes downward, its walls rough and damp. The metallic scent Watson noticed earlier is stronger here, mingled with something acrid like burnt chemicals. Holmes leads the way, his lantern barely piercing the tunnel's gloom. The passage twists, its walls narrowing until they must sidestep. Carefully, after several yards, they find a small alcove, its floor littered with debris-broken glass, a torn scrap of paper, and a small brass key. Holmes kneels, inspecting the paper, which bears a partial sketch of the manor's north wing in Thomas' hand, with a circled area labelled vault. The key, ornate and heavy, doesn't match any lock they've seen, but Holmes pockets it, his eyes gleaming. Thomas was searching for something specific, he says. A vault, perhaps tied to the Blackwood fortune Harrow mentioned. Watson suggests it could be a family relic, but Holmes suspects it's more something worth killing for. The glass fragments, he notes, have a faint chemical residue, possibly from a vial or burner, hinting at someone using the tunnel for clandestine purposes. Could this be how the whispers were created, or is it tied to Thomas's disappearance? Returning to the crypt, Holmes examines the sarcophagi, focusing on one marked Lady Margaret Blackwood, 1782. Its lid is slightly ajar, and he pushes it aside, revealing a hidden compartment beneath, empty except for a faint outline in the dust, as if something rectangular box or book was recently removed. This is no resting place, Holmes says, but a hiding spot. He theorizes Thomas found this compartment while exploring, perhaps uncovering a secret that made him a target. Watson, growing anxious, hears a faint scraping sound from the tunnel, like footsteps. Holmes signals for silence, dousing the lantern, and they wait in darkness, the only sound their shallow breaths. The noise stops, but the air feels charged, as if someone or something is watching. Holmes relights the lantern, his expression grim. "We're not alone," he whispers, urging Watson to stay close as they return to the main house. Back in the great hall, Holmes questions Eleanor about the crypt and the vault on Thomas' sketch. Her face pales. She recalls Thomas mentioning a family legend about a hidden vault containing documents or jewels. A secret Sir Reginald guarded fiercely. He'd forbidden Thomas from exploring the crypt, calling it sacred ground. This strengthens Holmes' suspicion that Thomas's disappearance is tied to this vault, perhaps discovered by someone else: Harrow, Arthur Blackwood, or even the staff. He decides to confront Mrs. Gray again, finding her in the kitchen, her stern face set like stone. Holmes asks about the crypt, mentioning the opened sarcophagus. Mrs. Gray's composure cracks. She snaps that it's a family matter, not for outsiders, but her hands tremble, betraying fear. Holmes presses, asking if she's heard whispers in the crypt. She denies it, but her eyes dart to a ring of keys on her belt, one resembling the brass key Holmes found. He makes a mental note she's involved, willingly or not. Holmes then seeks Mr. Amos, finding him repairing a fence near the manor's edge. The groundskeeper is gruff, his answers clipped, but he admits to knowing about the tunnel, claiming it's used for drainage. When Holmes mentions the chemical residue, Amos' scowl deepens, and he mutters about meddling fools before stalking off. Holmes suspects Amos knows more about the manor's hidden spaces than he lets on, perhaps aiding someone in their scheme. To dig deeper, Holmes sends a telegram to a contact in London, requesting records on the Blackwood family's history, particularly any scandals or missing heirs tied to the vault. He also asks Watson to keep an eye on Harrow, who's due to visit tomorrow, suspecting the historian's chalk-stained cuff links him to the manor's secrets as night settles. The manor grows quieter, but the whispers seem to follow Holmes and Watson to their rooms. Holmes sketches the crypt's layout, marking the tunnel and sarcophagus, theorizing that the vault holds something valuable, documents proving a rival claim to the estate, perhaps, or a treasure Arthur Blackwood might kill for. The chemical residue suggests a modern element, possibly a device to amplify whispers or create fear. Watson, unnerved by the scraping sound in the crypt, suggests they search it again, but Holmes insists on waiting for daylight when they can bring tools to open the vault. He warns Watson to lock his door, sensing the manor's danger growing. As Watson retires, he hears a faint murmur, like a voice whispering leave, and checks his revolver. Determined to stand by Holmes, the crypt has revealed a dark secret. But Blackwood Manor's whispers grow louder, hinting at a deeper plot. The vault, the chemical residue, and the staff's evasiveness point to a conspiracy that claimed Thomas and may claim others. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they confront Clarence Harrow and uncover a shocking truth about the Blackwood vault, bringing them closer to the heart of the mystery and the danger within the walls. If you're gripped by this chilling tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. What's in the vault, and who's behind the whispers? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The morning sun struggles to pierce the heavy clouds over Blackwood Manor, casting a pale, uneasy light across its weathered stones. Sherlock Holmes stands in the great hall, his sharp eyes scanning the portraits as he awaits Clarence Harrow's arrival. The discoveries in the crypta hidden compartment, the brass key, the chemical residue, and the tunnel leading to a mysterious vault have deepened the mystery of Thomas Grayson's disappearance. the whispers, the chilling note, and the manor's oppressive atmosphere point to a calculated plot, and Holmes suspects Harrow. The historian, with a chalk-stained cuff and an unhealthy fixation on the manor's past, holds crucial answers. John Watson, still rattled by the scraping sound in the crypt, grips his revolver beneath his coat, sensing the danger closing in. Holmes, undaunted, is ready to confront Harrow, hoping to unravel the truth about the Blackwood vault and its connection to the whispers that seem to haunt every corner of this ancient estate. Harrow arrives promptly, his gaunt frame wrapped in a threadbare coat, his eyes burning with a zealot's intensity. He carries a satchel stuffed with manuscripts, their edges yellowed and curling. Holmes greets him with calculated politeness, inviting him to the library to discuss the manors. History. Harrow launches into a fervent lecture about the Blackwood family, tracing their lineage to a 17th-century lord who built the manor on the ruins of a medieval abbey. He speaks of a lost heir, Edward Blackwood, who vanished in 1782 after a feud over a hidden fortune rumored to be gold, jewels, or documents proving a rival claim to the estate. The walls protect it, Harrow says, his voice low, almost reverent. They speak to those who listen. Watson shifts uncomfortably, recalling the whispers, but Holmes' gaze is piercing. He asks Harrow about the vault Thomas marked on his plans. Harrow's face tightens, and he claims it's a myth, but his fingers clutch his satchel, and Holmes notes a faint tremor. "You've been in the passages, haven't you?" Holmes asks, gesturing to the chalk smudge on Harrow's cuff. Harrow stammers, denying it, but his eyes dart to the door, betraying his unease. Holmes presses further, mentioning the crypt's hidden compartment and the chemical residue. Harrow's composure falters. He mutters about old experiments, claiming Sir Reginald once dabbled in alchemy, leaving traces of chemicals in the manor. Holmes finds this dubious alchemy is a convenient excuse, but the residue smelled modern, possibly from a device to amplify whispers. He asks if Harrow ever spoke to Thomas about the vault. Harrow admits to warning Thomas against renovations, saying they'd anger the manor spirit, but insists he meant no harm. Holmes notices a folded map peeking from Harrow's satchel, its edges marked with symbols matching Thomas' sketches. "May I?" Holmes asks, reaching for it. Harrow snatches it back, his voice sharp. "It's private research." He snaps, but Holmes has seen enough. The map shows the north wing and crypt, with the vault circled in red. Harrow is no bystander. He's deeply entwined in the manor's secrets. Leaving Harrow to stew, Holmes and Watson return to the crypt, armed with tools to explore the tunnel further. Eleanor joins them, her face pale but resolute, clutching a lantern. The iron gate creaks as Holmes pries it open, revealing the tunnel's continuation into darkness. They follow its winding path, the walls narrowing until the air feels suffocating. After several minutes, they reach a heavy stone door, its surface carved with the Blackwood crest. The brass key from the alcove fits perfectly, and with a grinding rasp, the door opens into a small, vaulted chamber. Inside, they find a dusty oak chest, its lid engraved with the initials E.B. Edward Blackwood. Holmes opens it cautiously, revealing a bundle of papers, a small pouch of gold coins, and a sealed vial of clear liquid. The papers are legal documents, dated 1782, declaring Edward Blackwood the true heir, disinheriting the main branch. Watson gasps. This could append the current inheritance, giving Arthur Blackwood a motive to kill Thomas. The vial, however, puzzles Holmes. Its chemical scent matches the tunnel's residue, suggesting it's part of the whisper mechanism. Holmes examines the documents, noting their originals, their ink faded but legible. This is what Thomas found, he says. It threatens someone's claim, Arthur, perhaps, or another. Watson suggests Harrow might be protecting the vault to preserve the manor's history. But Holmes suspects greed, not sentiment. The vial, he theorizes, could contain a chemical used to create sound effects, perhaps vaporized through pipes to mimic whispers. He pockets it for analysis, planning to consult a chemist in London. As they leave the vault, Eleanor points out a faint inscription on the wall. The walls guard the truth. It's in Thomas's hand, scratched hastily, as if he knew he was in danger. Holmes' eyes narrow. This confirms Thomas was close to exposing a secret worth killing for. Back in the manor, Holmes questions Mrs. Gray about the vault, showing her the brass key. Her face pales, and she admits Sir Reginald spoke of a family secret hidden in the crypt, forbidding anyone to enter. She claims ignorance of the key's purpose, but Holmes notices it matches one on her ring, suggesting she's been in the vault. Mr. Amos, when confronted, grows belligerent, insisting the crypt is cursed and should be left alone. Holmes senses their fear. Both are hiding knowledge, perhaps protecting someone or themselves. He decides to watch Harrow closely, suspecting the historian may try to access the vault now that he knows Holmes is near it. To test this, Holmes spreads a rumor through Eleanor that he's found papers that change everything, hoping to provoke a reaction. As night falls, the manor feels alive with tension. Watson hears the whispers again, louder now, murmuring leave from the walls. Holmes, unfazed, sets a trap, placing a decoy chest in the crypt and rigging it with a thin wire to alert him if disturbed. He and Watson take turns keeping watch, their lanterns dim to avoid detection. The manor's silence is oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak or sigh. Holmes theorizes that the vault's documents are the heart of the mystery, and the whispers are a tool to scare away Threadstamus, and now them. Arthur Blackwood's greed, Harrow's obsession, or the staff's loyalty could drive the plot, but the chemical vial suggests a modern mind at work, manipulating the manor's ancient fears. The vault's secrets have brought Holmes closer to the truth, but the whispers grow more insistent, and danger lurks in every shadow. Thomas' fate, the Blackwood fortune, and a hidden heir point to a deadly conspiracy. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they catch a suspect in the act, uncovering a chilling connection to the manor's past that threatens to claim them all. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Who's behind the vault's secrets? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The darkness of Blackwood Manor presses in as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson keep vigil in the crypt, their lanterns dimmed to mere slivers of light. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone and the faint chemical temps from the vial, found in the vault, which Holmes believes is key to the manor's haunting whispers. The discovery of Edward Blackwood's documents, proving a rival claim to the estate, has heightened the stakes, suggesting Thomas Grayson's disappearance was no accident but a calculated move to protect a hidden fortune or legacy. Holmes trap a decoy chest rigged with wire in the crypts set to catch whoever seeks the vault's secrets, be it Clarence Harrow with his obsessive knowledge of the manor's past, Arthur Blackwood driven by greed, or the evasive staff. Mrs. Gray and Mr. Amos, Watson his revolver at the ready, feels the manor's oppressive weight, the whispers now a low hum in his ears, urging them to flee. Holmes, his mind razor-sharp, waits in the shadows, ready to expose the culprit behind the whispering walls. As midnight approaches, a faint tug on the wire signals movement. Holmes signals Watson to stay silent, his eyes fixed on the tunnels. Entrance, a figure emerges, cloaked in darkness, moving stealthily toward the decoy chest. Holmes raises his lantern, revealing Clarence Harrow, his gaunt face pale and his hands clutching a crowbar. "Mr. Harrow," Holmes says, his voice cutting. "Through the silence, your interest in the vault is most revealing." Harrow freezes, his eyes wild with panic, then bolts for the tunnel, but Watson blocks his path, revolver raised. Harrow collapses against the sarcophagus, stammering that he only wanted to protect the manor's history. Holmes is unconvinced, pointing to the chalk smudge on Harrow's cuff and the map in his satchel, which matches Thomas' sketches. "You've been in these passages," Holmes says, "and you knew what Thomas found." Harrow admits to exploring the tunnels, claiming he was searching for Edward Blackwood's lost papers to preserve them, but denies harming Thomas. His trembling hands and shifty gaze suggest otherwise, and Holmes presses him on the chemical vial. Harrow insists it's an old alchemical relic, but Holmes suspects he's lying to cover a more sinister use. Holmes escorts Harrow to the library, where Eleanor waits, her face etched with fear. He questions Harrow about the whispers, asking if he rigged a device to scare Thomas. Harrow's denial is vehement, but he lets slip that he heard the whispers himself, describing them as the manor's voice, guarding its secrets. Holmes seizes on this, theorizing that the chemical vial, possibly containing a volatile substance, was used with pipes or vents to amplify sounds, creating the illusion of a haunted manor. He sends Watson to fetch Mrs. Gray, hoping to confront her about the matching key on her ring. When she arrives, her stern facade cracks as Holmes reveals the vault's contents. "You knew of the documents," he says, holding up the brass key. Mrs. Gray admits Sir Reginald entrusted her with guarding the crypt, but claims she never entered the vault. Her voice falters when Holmes mentions the chemical scent, and she glances nervously at Harrow, suggesting a connection. Holmes notes this, suspecting they may be working together or against each other to test his theory. Holmes examines the manor's ventilation system, tracing pipes from the crypt to the north wing. In a dusty attic, he finds a crude apparatus, a small burner, and a network of copper tubes leading to the walls. The burner's residue matches the vial's scent, confirming Holmes' suspicion. Someone used it to vaporize a chemical, carrying whispers through the manor to terrify Thomas. The setup is sophisticated, requiring knowledge of chemistry and the manor's layout, pointing to Harrow's expertise or Amos' familiarity with the estate. Holmes returns to the library, where Harrow and Mrs. Gray wait under Watson's watchful eye. He confronts them with the burner, watching their reactions. Harrow's face pales, and he mutters about preserving the past, while Mrs. Gray insists she only maintained the manor systems. Holmes senses they're protecting someone, perhaps Arthur Blackwood, whose claim to the estate would be voided by Edward's documents. Holmes decides to investigate Arthur further, sending a telegram to his London contact for details on Arthur's whereabouts during Thomas's disappearance. While awaiting a reply, he explores the north wing again, focusing on the hollow wall near the tower. With Watson's help, he removes a loose panel, revealing a narrow space filled with cobwebs and a small, locked box. The brass key opens it, uncovering a journal in Sir Reginald's hand, detailing his discovery of Edward Blackwood's claim, and his decision to hide it to protect the family's title. The journal mentions a trusted ally who helped conceal the vault, hinting at Mrs. Gray or Amos. It also warns of a shadow in the family, suggesting Sir Reginald suspected someone, possibly Arthur, of betrayal. Holmes theorizes Thomas found this journal, prompting his obsession with the vault and making him a target as evening falls. Holmes gathers Eleanor, Harrow, and Mrs. Gray in the Great Hall, dropping hints about the journal to gauge their reactions. Harrow grows agitated, claiming the journal is a historical treasure, while Mrs. Gray's eyes widen, her hands clutching her apron. Watson notices Amos lurking near the door, his scowl deeper than usual. Holmes spreads another rumor, telling Eleanor within earshot of the others that he's sending the journal to London for authentication. He hopes this will provoke the culprit into action, perhaps to steal or destroy the evidence. That night, he and Watson take shifts, watching the crypt's entrance, expecting an attempt on the decoy chest. The manor is silent, but the whispers persist, now forming a chilling phrase. The truth must stay buried. Watson's nerves fray, but Holmes remains calm, his mind piecing together the clues: the burner, the journal, and the vault's secrets. All point to a conspiracy to protect the Blackwood legacy. Sees it. The tension in Blackwood Manor is a living thing, and Holmes' trap has ensnared Harrow, but the true culprit remains elusive. The journal and the chemical device reveal a plot rooted in the manor's past, with Arthur, Mrs. Gray, or Amos as potential players. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they receive a shocking reply from London, uncovering a betrayal that ties the whispers to a deadly plan and puts them in the killer's sights. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Who's behind the vault secrets? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The oppressive gloom of Blackwood Manor seems to thicken as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson sit in their dimly lit guest room, the faint glow of a lantern casting long shadows across the walls. The whispers, now a chilling refrain of the truth must stay buried, echo faintly, as if the manor itself is warning them to stop. Holmes' trap in the crypt has caught Clarence Harrow red-handed, but his evasive answers and the chemical burner's discovery suggest a deeper conspiracy, tied to the vault's secrets documents, proving Edward Blackwood's claim to the estate. The journal of Sir Reginald, hinting at a shadow in the family and a trusted ally, has tightened Holmes' focus on Mrs. Gray, Mr. Amos, and Arthur Blackwood, whose greed for the inheritance makes him a prime suspect. Watson, his revolver close, feels the manor's menace growing, but Holmes is relentless, awaiting a telegram from London that could confirm Arthur's role or reveal another traitor. The trap is tightening, and Holmes is ready to provoke a desperate move that will unmask the mastermind behind Thomas Grayson's disappearance and the Whispering Walls. Holmes begins the day by re-examining the journal, its faded pages revealing more of Sir Reginald's fears. The shadow he mentioned was someone close, someone he suspected of plotting against the family's legacy. A cryptic entry reads, "The heir must be protected, but the shadow watchers always near." Holmes suspects this refers to Arthur, whose fury over the inheritance was no secret. But the trusted ally could be Mrs. Gray, whose key matched the vault's lock, or Amos, whose knowledge of the manor's passages is unmatched. Holmes decides to test Mrs. Gray further, finding her in the pantry, her stern face set as she sorts linens. He confronts her with the journal, asking about Sir Reginald's warnings. Her hands freeze, and she insists she only followed orders to guard the crypt. but her eyes betray fear when Holmes mentions the chemical burner. "I know nothing of such things," she snaps, but her voice cracks, and she hurries away, leaving Holmes convinced she's hiding a connection to the whispers. Next, Holmes turns to Mr. Amos, tracking him to the manor's overgrown garden, where he's pruning hedges with a grim focus. Holmes questions him about the tunnel and the burner, noting Amos' familiarity with the manor's layout. The groundskeeper admits to maintaining the passages for practical reasons, like drainage, but denies any role in the whispers. When Holmes mentions the vault's documents, Amos' scowl deepens, and he mutters, "Some things are best left buried." Holmes presses, asking if Arthur Blackwood ever visited the crypt. Amos hesitates, then admits Arthur was at the manor a month ago, inspecting the north wing with a keen interest. This confirms Arthur's opportunity, but Holmes suspects Amos is withholding more, perhaps out of loyalty or fear. He plants a seed, casually mentioning that the vault's papers are being sent to London. Watching Amos's eyes narrow with alarm, the telegram from London arrives at noon, delivered by a nervous village boy. Holmes tears it open, his eyes scanning the contents with fierce intensity. It reveals a bombshell. Arthur Blackwood has a criminal record. Arrested in 1894, fraud and blackmail in London, though he escaped conviction. More startling, he was spotted in Yorkshire the night Thomas vanished, staying at a nearby inn under an alias. Holmes' mind races. Arthur's greed and cunning make him a likely orchestrator of the whispers, perhaps using the burner to scare Thomas into abandoning the manor. But the journal's mention of a trusted ally suggests Arthur had help, possibly from within the household. Holmes theorizes that Arthur, aware of Edward Blackwood's claim, sought to eliminate Thomas to secure the estate, using the manor's reputation to mask his crime, to tighten the net. Holmes examines the burner's setup in the attic, finding a small notebook tucked behind a pipe. Its pages filled with chemical formulas and sketches of the manor's ventilation system. The handwriting isn't Thomas, Harrow's, or Sir Reginald's. It's new, precise, and unfamiliar. Holmes suspects it belongs to the mastermind, someone with scientific knowledge to manipulate the whispers. He compares it to a letter Arthur sent Eleanor, threatening legal action over the inheritance, and finds similarities in the penstrokes. This strengthens his case against Arthur, but the involvement of Mrs. Gray or Amos or even Harrow remains unclear. Holmes decides to confront Arthur, summoning him to the manor under the pretense of discussing the estate's future. Eleanor, anxious but cooperative, sends the invitation, warning that Arthur is volatile and may suspect a trap. Arthur arrives by dusk, his broad frame filling the doorway, his eyes cold and calculating. Holmes greets him in the library, keeping Watson and Eleanor nearby for safety. He begins with disarming questions about the Blackwood legacy, then shifts to the vault, mentioning Edward's documents. Arthur's face reddens, and he accuses Thomas of stealing his birthright, but denies any knowledge of the crypt. Holmes reveals the telegram, detailing Arthur's criminal past, and watches his composure crack. "Lies," Arthur shouts, slamming his fist on the table, but his eyes dart to Mrs. Gray, who's serving tea in the background. Holmes catches the glance, suspecting she's the trusted ally who helped Arthur access the vault or rig the whispers. He drops a final bombshell, claiming the notebook's formulas will be analyzed, linking the whispers to a chemical plot. Arthur's anger falters, replaced by a flicker of fear, and he storms out, vowing to return with a lawyer. That night, Holmes and Watson patrol the manor, expecting Arthur or his accomplice to act. They hear a faint clatter from the crypt and rush to investigate, finding the decoy chest disturbed, its wire snapped. Footprints in the dust lead to the tunnel, but no one is there. Holmes examines the prints, noting they're smaller than Arthur's, possibly Mrs. Gray's or Harrow's. He suspects the killer is desperate, trying to retrieve or destroy evidence before the notebook's analysis. Holmes sets a new trap, placing a fake document in the vault, marked with invisible ink only he can detect, hoping to catch the culprit handling it. As they return to their rooms, the whispers grow louder, now hissing, "You'll never know." Watson's nerves are taut, but Holmes is energized, his mind piecing together Arthur's betrayal, the staff's complicity, and the chemical deception. The Manor's secrets are unraveling, and Arthur's exposure has shaken the conspiracy. But the true mastermind remains elusive. The notebook, the vault, and the whispers point to a deadly plan to control the Blackwood legacy. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they spring their trap, catching a suspect with the fake document and uncovering a chilling link to Thomas's fate that puts them in mortal danger. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Is Arthur the killer, or is someone else pulling the strings? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The shadows of Blackwood Manor seem to writhe as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson take their positions in the crypt, their lanterns dimmed to avoid detection. The whispers, now a sinister hiss of "you'll never know," pulse through the damp air, amplifying the tension that grips the ancient estate. Holmes' latest trapper, fake document marked with invisible ink, placed in the vault, awaits the culprit, desperate to protect the secrets of Edward Blackwood's claim, which threatens the current inheritance. Arthur Blackwood's criminal past and his furious reaction to Holmes' probing make him a prime suspect. But Mrs. Gray's nervous glances and the mysterious notebook of chemical formulas suggest a deeper conspiracy, possibly involving her. Or Clarence Harrow. The disturbed decoy chest and footprints in the crypt point to someone acting under pressure. And Holmes is certain the killer is close to breaking. Watson, his revolver steady despite his racing heart, feels the Manor's menace closing in, but Holmes is in his element, ready to spring the trap and unmask the mastermind behind Thomas Grayson's disappearance and the whispering walls. Holmes and Watson conceal themselves behind a sarcophagus, their eyes fixed on the vault's stone door. The fake document, a forged letter implying Edward Blackwood's heir is alive, is designed to lure the culprit into revealing themselves. Holmes has coated it with a chemical that glows faintly under ultraviolet light, visible only with his specialized lens. As they wait, the crypt's silence is broken by a faint scrape, like boots on stone. Holmes signals Watson to stay still, his gaze locked on the tunnel's entrance. A figure emerges, cloaked in a dark hood, moving swiftly to the vault. Holmes steps forward, lantern raised, and the figure freezes. It's Mrs. Gray, her stern face pale with fear, clutching the fake document. "Mrs. Gray," Holmes says, his voice sharp, "your presence here is most illuminating." She gasps, dropping the paper, and tries to flee, but Watson blocks her path, his revolver gleaming. In the dim light, her composure crumbles, and she stammers, "I was only checking the vault for Sir Reginald's sake." Holmes interrogates her on the spot, his questions relentless. He reveals the document's invisible ink, proving she handled it, and demands to know her role in the whispers. Mrs. Gray, trembling, admits she helped maintain the manor's passages, but denies creating the whispers. She claims Arthur Blackwood coerced her, threatening her livelihood unless she aided his plan to scare Thomas away. Arthur, she says, learned of the vault's documents from Sir Reginald's journal, which he stole during his visit a month ago. He believed Edward's claim would give him the estate, but Thomas' renovations threatened to expose the vault. Mrs. Gray confesses to rigging the chemical burner under Arthur's instructions, using a volatile liquid to carry whispers through the pipes, amplifying them to terrify Thomas. But she insists she didn't harm him, claiming Arthur took Thomas after his disappearance. Holmes notes her fear she's not the mastermind, but a pawn in Arthur's scheme to confirm her story. Holmes and Watson escort Mrs. Gray to the library, where Eleanor waits, her eyes wide with shock at the housekeeper's betrayal. Holmes sends a message to the village constable, requesting Arthur's immediate detention at the inn where he's staying. While awaiting a response, Holmes examines the notebook again, comparing its formulas to the vial from the vault. The handwriting, he realizes, matches Arthur's letter to Eleanor, confirming he designed the whisper device. Holmes theorizes Arthur poisoned Thomas's mind with fear, using the manor's reputation to drive him to the crypt, where he was either killed or hidden. The chemical residue suggests a modern plot, but the motive securing the estate. Back to Edward Blackwood's claim, Holmes decides to search Arthur's room at the inn, hoping to find evidence of Thomas' fate. They arrive at the inn under cover of darkness, the constable granting them access to Arthur's spouse room. Holmes searches with methodical precision, finding a hidden satchel under the floorboards. Inside a Thomas watch, engraved with his initials, and a map of the manor with the crypt circled in red. A chilling note in Arthur's hand reads, "He found the truth silenced him." Watson's stomach churns. This is proof Arthur targeted Thomas, likely for discovering the vault. Holmes also finds a vial of the same chemical used in the burner, solidifying Arthur's role in the whispers. But where is Thomas? Holmes suspects he's still in the manor, perhaps in a hidden chamber beyond the vault. He instructs the constable to arrest Arthur, who's drinking in the inn's tavern, oblivious to the net closing around him, returning to the manor. Holmes and Watson search the crypt again, focusing on the tunnel beyond the vault. They find a concealed door, its lock matching the brass key. Inside is a small, airless chamber, and there, slumped against the wall, is Thomas Grayson, live but weak, bound and gagged. Watson rushes to him, checking his pulse, while Holmes cuts the ropes. Thomas, disoriented, whispers that Arthur locked him here, threatening to kill him if he revealed the vault's secrets. Arthur had used the whispers to drive him to the crypt, where he was ambushed. Holmes helps Thomas to the main house, where Eleanor weeps with relief at his return. But the danger isn't over. Arthur, now in custody, may have an accomplice, and Mrs. Gray's role remains murky. Holmes gathers Mrs. Gray, Eleanor, and Thomas in the Great Hall, revealing Arthur's plan to scare Thomas into abandoning the manor, then kill him to secure the estate. Mrs. Gray, under pressure, admits she helped Arthur access the passages, but claims ignorance of his intent to harm Thomas. Holmes suspects she's lying to protect herself, but her fear of Arthur suggests she's not the mastermind. He sends the chemical vial and notebook to a London chemist for analysis, hoping to confirm Arthur's methods. As they await Arthur's interrogation, the whispers grow faint, as if the manor senses its secrets are exposed. Holmes, however, remains vigilant, sensing a loose thread. Harrow's role and Amos' evasiveness hint at a deeper conspiracy. The trap has sprung, and Thomas is safe, But Arthur's arrest hasn't silenced the manor's secrets. The whispers, the vault, and a web of betrayal point to a plot that may still threaten the Graysons. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they interrogate Arthur, uncovering a final twist that reveals the true scope of the conspiracy and puts them in the path of a deadly reckoning. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Is Arthur the sole culprit, or is another shadow lurking? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The flickering lanterns in Blackwood Manor's great hall cast an eerie glow as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson prepare to confront Arthur Blackwood. Now in the village constable's custody, the rescue of Thomas Grayson from the hidden chamber, alive but shaken, has brought relief. But the manor's whispers, though fainter still, murmur you'll never know, a taunting reminder that the full truth remains elusive. Arthur's criminal past, the chemical burner, and the incriminating note found in his satchel point to him as the mastermind behind the plot to eliminate Thomas and secure the estate through Edward Blackwood's claim. Yet Holmes suspects a deeper layer to the conspiracy. With Mrs. Gray's complicity and Clarence Harrow's evasiveness hinting at an accomplice still at large, Mr. Amos' guarded demeanor adds another thread, and Holmes is determined to unravel it all through Arthur's interrogation. Watson, his revolver still close, senses the manor's oppressive air tightening, as if it guards one final secret. Holmes, his mind razor-sharp, is ready to extract a confession that will expose the shadow behind the whispering walls. Holmes and Watson arrive at the village inn, where Arthur is held in a small, guarded room, his broad frame slouched but his eyes burning with defiance. The constable, a stout man named Briggs, allows Holmes to lead the questioning, standing by with a wary frown. Holmes begins with calm precision, laying out the evidence, the stolen journal, the chemical burner, Thomas' watch, and the note. Demanding his silence, Arthur's jaw tightens, but he denies everything, claiming he was framed. "I only wanted my rightful share," he growls, his voice thick with resentment. Holmes counters with the telegram revealing Arthur's fraud. Conviction then produces the notebook with his handwriting, linking him to the whisper device. Arthur's defiance falters, his hands clenching as Holmes describes the vault's documents, which prove Edward Blackwood's claim and nullify Arthur's inheritance. "You knew Thomas found the truth," Holmes says, his voice cutting like a blade. "You used the whispers to drive him to the crypt, where you ambushed him." Arthur's eyes dart to the door, but there's no escape. Under Holmes' relentless pressure, Arthur's composure cracks. He admits to rigging the burner with Mrs. Gray's help, using a chemical to amplify whispers through the manor's pipes, hoping to scare Thomas into abandoning his restoration plans. He learned of the vault from Sir Reginald's journal, stolen, during his visit, and saw it as his chance to claim the estate. But he insists he didn't plan to kill Thomas, only to frighten him into leaving. "He was stubborn," Arthur mutters, digging where he shouldn't. When Thomas found the vault, Arthur panicked, luring him to the crypt with a false message about a discovery, then locking him in the hidden chamber. Holmes presses further, asking about Mrs. Gray's role. Arthur reveals she was Sir Reginald's confidant, entrusted with guarding the vault's secret. But her loyalty shifted to him when he promised her a share of the estate. Her fear of exposure, Arthur claims, drove her to help with the whispers and cover his tracks. Holmes shifts focus to Clarence Harrow, suspecting the historian's involvement goes beyond obsession. Arthur scoffs, calling Harrow a fanatic who pestered him about the manor's history but wasn't part of the plan. Yet Holmes recalls Harrow's chalk-stained cuff and his map of the crypt, suggesting he explored the passages independently. To test this, Holmes sends Watson to fetch Harrow from the inn's tavern, where he's been lingering. Harrow arrives, his gaunt face pale, and Holmes confronts him with the map and the chemical vial. Harrow admits to sneaking into the passages, driven by his belief that the vault held historical artifacts, but denies harming Thomas. He claims he heard the whispers too, thinking they were supernatural, and his fear kept him silent. Holmes doubts this. Harrow's knowledge of the manor's layout makes him a potential accomplice, though his motive remains unclear. Returning to the manor, Holmes gathers Eleanor, Thomas, and Mrs. Gray in the library to piece together the conspiracy. Thomas, recovering but weak, confirms Arthur's story. The whispers drove him to the crypt, where Arthur ambushed him, threatening to kill him if he revealed the vault's secrets. Mrs. Gray, under Holmes' piercing gaze, confesses to helping. Arthur, admitting she rigged the burner and hid the journal to protect the Blackwood legacy and her own future. But she insists she didn't know Arthur would harm Thomas, claiming she only wanted to preserve Sir Reginald's wishes. Holmes senses a half-truth. Her loyalty to Arthur seems driven by fear, not greed. He questions Mr. Amos, who's been conspicuously absent, finding him in the stables, polishing tools with a grim focus. Amos admits to knowing about the passages, but claims he stayed out of Arthur's mad scheme. His evasive answers, however, keep him in Holmes' sights. Holmes returns to the crypt to examine the hidden chamber, hoping to find clues to Harrow's role or another accomplice. He discovers a faint scratch on the chamber's wall, in the shape of a Blackwood crest and a small, hidden panel. Behind it lies a locket, engraved with Edward Blackwood and containing a miniature portrait of a man resembling Arthur. This suggests Arthur may be a direct descendant of Edward, giving him a stronger motive to secure the vaults. Documents. Holmes theorizes that Arthur used the whispers not just to scare Thomas, but to distract from his own search for the locket, which could prove his claim. The chemical burner, likely supplied by a contact from Arthur's criminal past, added a modern twist to the manor's ancient fears, making the plot seem supernatural as night falls. Holmes sets a final trap, spreading a rumor through Eleanor that the locket will be sent to London for authentication, hoping to flush out any remaining accomplices. He and Watson patrol the manor, hearing the whispers fade, as if the manor knows its secrets are exposed. But a sudden crash from the north. Wing sends them running, finding Harrow tampering with the hollow wall, a crowbar in hand. He claims he's searching for historical truth, but Holmes arrests him with the constable's help, suspecting he's after the locket to sell or destroy it. The manor's tension peaks, and Holmes knows the final piece of the puzzle is near, but the shadow of betrayal lingers, hinting at one last twist. Arthur's confession has exposed the conspiracy, but Harrow's actions and the locket's discovery suggest a deeper plot tied to the Blackwood legacy. The whispers may be silenced, but danger still lurks in the manor's walls. In the next chapter, we'll follow Holmes and Watson as they uncover the final secret, confronting the true mastermind in a heart-stopping climax that reveals the full scope of the whispering walls. If you're gripped by this haunting tale, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling it with us. Is Harrow an accomplice, or is another shadow hiding? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's see if you can outsmart Sherlock Holmes. The air in Blackwood Manor feels charged with the weight of its unveiled secrets as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson stand in the great hall. the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows across the ancient tapestries. Arthur Blackwood's confession has exposed his plot to scare Thomas Grayson into abandoning the manor and secure the estate through Edward Blackwood's claim, with Mrs. Gray's reluctant aid in rigging the chemical burner that fueled the haunting whispers. The discovery of the locket, bearing Edward's initials and a portrait resembling Arthur, suggests he's a direct descendant, giving him a powerful motive to silence Thomas. Yet Clarence Harrow's attempt to tamper with the hollow wall and his evasive denials hint at a deeper role, and Mr. Amos's guarded silence keeps him in Holmes' sights. The whispers, now barely audible, seem to sigh the truth is out. But Holmes senses one final piece of the puzzle remains a mastermind. Who orchestrated the conspiracy beyond Arthur's greed? With Thomas safe and Arthur in custody, Holmes is ready for a climactic confrontation to unmask the true shadow behind the whispering walls. But the manor's lingering menace warns that danger is far from over. Holmes gathers Eleanor, Thomas, Mrs. Gray, and Mr. Amos in the library, the constable standing guard at the door. Harrow, detained after his attempt to break into the hollow wall, sits under scrutiny, his gaunt face twitching with nervous energy. Holmes begins with a commanding presence, laying out the case. Arthur's use of the chemical burner to create the whispers, his ambush of Thomas in the crypt, and the vault's documents proving Edward Blackwood's claim. He holds up the locket, its portrait gleaming in the firelight, and watches Arthur's reaction from the constable's hold. This locket, Holmes says, proves your lineage, Mr. Blackwood, but also your desperation. Arthur snarls, admitting he sought the locket to solidify his claim, but insists he acted alone, save for Mrs. Gray's coerced help. Holmes' eyes narrow. He knows Arthur's cunning, but the sophistication of the whisper device and Harrow's involvement suggest a sharper mind at work. Turning to Harrow, Holmes confronts him with the map and chalk smudge, accusing him of exploring the passages to aid Arthur. Harrow, sweating, claims he only sought historical artifacts, believing the locket and documents were relics of the Blackwood legacy. But Holmes reveals a new clue, a letter found in Harrow's satchel, written in the same precise hand as the notebook of chemical formulas. The letter, addressed to an unknown recipient, discusses eliminating obstacles to secure the manor's secrets. You were no mere historian, Holmes says, his voice cutting. You were Arthur's partner, using your knowledge to perfect the whispers and trap Thomas. Harrow's face crumples, and he confesses he's a distant Blackwood cousin, obsessed with restoring the family's true lineage through Edward's claim. He supplied the chemical formula, taught Arthur how to use the burner, and scouted the passages, hoping to claim a share of the estate. Holmes then turns to Mrs. Gray, whose trembling hands betray her guilt. He reveals a second key found in her room, matching the vault's lock. You were Sir Reginald's trusted ally, he says, but you betrayed him for Arthur's promises. Mrs. Gray breaks, sobbing, admitting she helped Arthur access the vault, believing he'd reward her with wealth to escape her servitude. She rigged the burner under his orders, but claims she didn't know he'd harm Thomas, only scare him. Holmes, however, suspects she knew more. Her loyalty to the Blackwood name twisted by desperation. Mr. Amos, silent until now, shifts uncomfortably as Holmes questions him about the passages. Amos admits to guiding Arthur through the tunnels, thinking it was to retrieve family heirlooms, but his evasive eyes suggest fear of exposure. Holmes presses, revealing a tool in Amos' shed matching the scratches on the crypt's gate, implicating him in Thomas's imprisonment. The final piece falls into place when Holmes examines the locket's portrait again, noticing a faint inscription on the back, "To my son, from Ebe." This, combined with Harrow's letter, suggests Harrow orchestrated the plot, using Arthur as a pawn to reclaim the Blackwood legacy for himself. Holmes confronts Harrow with this, accusing him of masterminding the conspiracy. Harrow, cornered, confesses fully he discovered his Blackwood ancestry years ago and sought the vault's documents to prove his claim. When Thomas began renovating, Harrow feared exposure, so he recruited Arthur, promising him the estate in exchange for his muscle. The whispers were Harrow's idea, a psychological weapon to drive Thomas mad, while Arthur executed the ambush. Mrs. Gray and Amos, manipulated by promises or fear, played smaller roles. Maintaining the passages and covering tracks, Holmes seals the case by producing the chemical analysis from London, confirming the vial's contents as a volatile compound, used in the burner, with traces matching Harrow's manuscripts. The constable arrests Harrow and Arthur, while Mrs. Gray and Amos face charges for complicity. Thomas, still weak, thanks Holmes, his voice hoarse but grateful. Eleanor weeps, clutching her brother, as the manor's oppressive air seems to lift, the whispers silenced at last. Holmes explains to Watson that Harrow's obsession with the Blackwood legacy, combined with Arthur's greed, created a perfect storm of deception, using the manor's myths to mask their crime. The locket, he notes, will be authenticated, ensuring the estate passes to its rightful heirs, Zelenor and Thomas, as they prepare to leave Blackwood Manor. Holmes takes a final walk through its corridors, his keen eyes noting the now silent walls. The manor, stripped of its secrets, feels less menacing, but Watson still shivers at the memory of its whispers. Holmes, satisfied, remarks, "The walls spoke, Watson, but only of human greed and folly." They board a carriage back to London, the moors fading into the mist, leaving behind a case that tested even Holmes' brilliance. The mystery of Blackwood Manor is solved, a tale of betrayal and redemption etched into its stones. This haunting journey through Sherlock Holmes and the whispering walls has kept us on edge, and I hope you've loved unraveling it as much as I have. If you enjoyed this chilling adventure, smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling tales of Holmes' genius. Who did you suspect until the end? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about how Holmes outsmarted the shadows of Blackwood Manor.